for today, for attending today's session. It's just a 147. This is called the Using Sparta's GED and Employability Skills Curriculum to Increase Performance with Heather Holland. And I think you had another co-host with you, Heather Ann Haight, I believe. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced her name. My name is Maha Ayub. I am the Assistant Supervisor of the Dearborn Adult and Community Ed. I'll be moderating the session today. We wanted to welcome you to the Fall Conference, MAK Fall Conference. Thank you so much for being here today. Please don't forget, just some housekeeping items. After the session, if you can rate the session, please, and join us tonight at 7 o'clock. We have an animal trivia. Don't ask me any questions about that because I will just be listening in. But please go ahead and attend. I think this creates a sense of community when we join things like this. If you can keep your camera on, if you can, please go ahead and do that. If you have any questions for Heather or Anne, you can leave them in the chat and I will, stop them and ask them. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask the questions. They want this to be an engaging session, so please feel free if you have a question. Sometimes it's great to ask a question when it's still hot, when it's still going, so we can have, like kind of clarification at that moment. Other than that, if you have anything, like I said, I'll be watching the Hova chat and the Zoom chat. Feel free to use either platform. There's a Q&A, there are polls in there if you want to go ahead and answer some of those. But again, I'm going to yield it now to Heather, and then again, enjoy the session.
Thanks, Maha. So I'm Heather Holland. I'm the Director of Sparta Adult Education, and I'm going to start us out, and then Ann Haight is one of our lead instructors at Sparta, so she's going to present with me here. So Ann, you can say hi if you want to, or not.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so we're going to start by talking about kind of how we came up with doing what we've done. And so the purpose of we created our own curriculum. We started with math because when we were teaching GED, we found we didn't like any one resource. And so we kind of just started pulling from different things and created our own curriculum. And so we started with math and GED, we went through the other subjects, and then we recently have developed, more recently anyway, a career coaching curriculum as well. So we're going to show all 5 of those things today, and you guys all get access to them, and you can use them however you want, and it's awesome. So with our GED curriculum, we bind it into planners for our students. So when a student enrolls with us for GED, they get a bound book that I don't have one. I should have had one here I could show. But it has all 4 subject areas and different color pages. And so they get it all right from the beginning, everything that, at least a good starting point, real good starting point of what they'll need to study. So it's a way for us to quickly and easily provide all the study materials to every student right from enrollment. And then it helps with my staff too, so that they're not dealing with making a lot of copies, or you run out of copies and then you have to make them on the fly, and then the copy machine jams and all of that. And we have 6 satellite locations too, so it's sometimes making copies. Some of our sites don't have a copy machine, so that can be a struggle. So this helps avoid that it's all in one place. And it also helps all of our teachers better understand the content that students are going to see and how to teach it. Because as we all know, as a teacher, you're probably only certified, most people are certified in 1 or 2 subject areas. Maybe you get into 3 or 4, but a lot of times they're not going to be all the core subject areas you would need to teach GED. And so with our career coaching curriculum, we built it to create a more efficient and effective way to cover career coaching content with our students. So we, for a long time, were based, for those of you, if you're in Region 4, you're familiar, but there's a model that Zealand Adult Ed uses. It's called the Literacy to Work model. And so we kind of based everything we made off of that, because that had been what we used in our program for so long, and we kind of just made it our own. We tried to make sure the content that we included was useful and actually meaningful for students, so that they're not just doing busy work to understand, credit scores. They're actually looking at their own credit score, that sort of thing. And everything in both of these is designed for students to work on independently. We talk them through it at the start to explain it, but they could just take the packet and do everything at home on their own if they understand enough to get through it all. So we did a poll, and I screenshotted Whova to get the results because I wanted to have it ahead of time. So I did this like an hour ago or so. And so the first question we asked was, what's your biggest struggle with career coaching? And if you haven't responded and you want to respond to the poll, feel free, because it's always good to have more input. But you can see the big three things with career coaching, the struggles are attendance, which I assume is student attendance, connecting with students, and motivation. And I didn't realize when I posted the polls that there was only going to be like a 15 or 20 character limit. So that's where some of these we have to read between the lines to find out what they mean. But I think we all probably have encountered the same kind of career coaching struggles. And hopefully we can address some of these through showing you our curriculum and how we do it. You know, things like where to start, having resources for it, those obviously this will help provide that. So like I said, it's our curriculum is based off the literacy to work model. Our local Board of Education has approved this content for 1.5 high school credits, elective credits. We have hypothetically 3 sections. There are 3 like content areas included. They are financial literacy and employability skills, and then we integrate computer literacy throughout the packet. And so let me see if this works. I'm going to go to our packet so you guys can see. So can you guys, I can zoom it in, but can you guys see that? Can someone let me know? Or do you see still use the PowerPoint?
We see it, you're good, Heather.
Okay. Sorry, I also had everybody's, I didn't turn off all the cameras and I'm like, if someone's giving me a thumbs up, I'm not looking at it. So let me turn those back on. So back to the PowerPoint real fast, there's a tiny URL for this. And so you guys can all have access to it, create a copy of it in a Google Drive, make it your own, do whatever you want. We try to update the same documents as we make changes. They're dynamic. So if you go to a link, it should have the new updates. Historically, we did not do that. So if you have our links to our packets from 3 years ago, they might be the 3-year-old packets and you might want to update them today. So basically we have a table of contents. It defines what pages are for what credits earned. We've got vocabulary. And then we basically have worksheets, one-off worksheets. And I'm gonna show you guys this one just briefly. I'm not gonna go through it step by step necessarily, but just to give you an idea. So one of our worksheets here is called Developing a Professional Persona. And the whole purpose of this is so that they don't have an email address that they're putting on a resume that's something like John likes cheese, because it's not super professional. Or sexy John, you know, things like that. Because we've all seen it a number of times where you're like, really, that's your email address you're using? So like step 1 of career coaching, let's be a professional. Let's have an email address with just our name somehow in there, our initials. And so then beyond that, talks them through step by step how to do that. And beyond that, we link to some YouTube videos about dressing for the job you want, and asking them to watch which ones are appropriate for them. And then give examples of things that you should wear and shouldn't wear. So they can, you know, make it their own and say, I shouldn't wear, you know, I don't know, some like serial killer Halloween mask to an interview. Like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that, but you do have to wear a face mask. So not all masks are excluded nowadays. Anyway, so that's like one example. So each of these is a 1-pager, generally speaking, with an example or a description, and then practice problems at the bottom. So got a lot of things here. I want to show one more. We get through credit scores. Like we explained credit scores on the previous page and kind of talked through that. And then we ask them to do a personal credit improvement plan. So they get to understand what credit score ranges generally are. They can do this through any way they want, but we say, hey, Credit Karma is free. If you want to make an account, you can find out your credit score and look at all your stuff. And then they can kind of make a plan to say, what's my current score? What do I wish it was? And understand the factors that impact that score. And then develop goals to improve their credit score, because probably most people, it takes a long time to get up into this 800 plus range, even with like conscious effort in doing it. So most of our students are probably lower and have room for improvement, right? I barely have an 800 credit score right now, and I've been working on it for a while. So I would venture to guess anyone who is enrolling with us probably hasn't been working on their credit score for the last 5 to 10 years and making improvements. So
Heather, if I may stop you, excuse me for a second. Many people are asking about the link. I think Anne just put it in there. Thank you so much, Anne. People were asking about that tiny link. Thank you so much.
Yep.
You're welcome.
And we can post all these too in Hoover somewhere, question and answer, whatever. I was going to do that. So for the career coaching stuff, it's easy. It's a tinyurl.com/Sparta career coach. We tried to make these as easy to remember as possible. So that's the career coaching stuff. Ooh, it keeps changing on my screen here. So we did another poll. And I guess that was all the questions on career coaching. Does anybody else have any questions on that before we move into GED stuff? Oh, okay. And if you do,
asking if they can buy the book. That's a question in the HOVA. That's a question for you, Heather. They can purchase the bound curriculum book.
So what we do is we just gave you the link, or we're giving you all the links to all this stuff. So you have all the content you need for free. You can print it yourselves. You can download them all as PDFs. That's what we do. I download the documents as PDFs and I say, I want this one first, this one second, this one third. And then I send them off to a print shop and say, hey, I want you to take these PDFs and I want you to bind them with a front and back cover and spiral binding, and they do it. So that's how we've done it. That's what I would recommend you guys do, but you do have the content all for free here. We're giving you the links to it. So that part, you just have to print it out one way or another. Okay. And I'll keep going and just interrupt me if there's other questions as we go. So we did another poll on what the main resource you use when you're teaching the GED is. So you guys can see there's a lot of Kaplan, some GED Academy, Edgenuity, Aztec. I like the little Sparta down here and the Sparta's Magic. Somebody was creative with that. And then a few other one-off IXL, Light and Salt. So it looks like a lot of people are using Kaplan, which is what we used for years. We use Steckman as well. We use Aztec. So we've dabbled in all of these, but we were a pretty big Kaplan program for a long time. Prior to us, and we still use these other resources where our curriculum is weaker, because we definitely do not cover every possible thing that they could need to know for the GED. We tried to focus our content on the high impact indicators for the GED tests for each subject area. So there could be things that are missing from our curriculum. Anne and I are both math teachers, and so I will go as far as to say our math curriculum is pretty awesome. We are not science, social studies, or language arts teachers, and those might be a little weaker or not as exciting, but everybody struggles with math. So we're just like, hey, our math stuff's good. I'll show an example in a second here too, of how we have kind of crosswalked our table of contents to like a GED score report. We have our teachers, some of our teachers do this and some we're working on it with, to assist students in matching up what their score report shows to the table of contents. And we'll show you each packet as well, just at least briefly looking at it. And every packet has all the answers in the back. And if you ever use these and you go through them and you see there's something wrong, there's a spelling error, there's an answer wrong, you let us know. And we would love to fix that because somehow our math stuff we started it probably 4 years ago and we still found an answer wrong in the back like last week. So things happen, we're working on it, work in progress. Okay, so the GED score report, somebody does a GED ready test, they get their score report out, it says, here's what you need to work on. So you guys are probably familiar with this and what this looks like when you pull it up on a score report. We just pulled a little example here. And so basically what we can do is say this by reading, let's do the middle one because it's short. Find the distance between numbers on a number line using absolute value. We know in our packet that that's number sense, absolute value. That's the page they would want to look at. And so we kind of just look at the key terms in each of the things on the score report and then figure out which pages would match with that. We did very recently, like a couple days ago, talk about doing, actually creating a crosswalk between what could show on a score report and our packets, but that is a future job here that might take a while to do. So just so you guys are aware, we tried to phrase them so that you can, read between the lines and try to figure out which pages they would need. And then basically here's what Anne does when she's teaching. Somebody does a GED ready, they get their score report, it shows up with whatever things, and she goes through and on her computer even just highlights, here's the pages you need. It takes a picture of it with her phone, texts it to the student, it says, here you go, this is what you need to work on. So then the student can see, okay, if I want more, I can do all the non-highlighted pages, but otherwise I'm going to start with page 23 because I need to know about absolute value. So that's a quick and easy way to do it. I'm going to pause there for a second. Are there any questions on that before we get into each subject area and showing the curriculum?
Somebody's asking if these resources are available in Spanish.
We did just have one of our teachers translate them all into Spanish. I've got to make sure the formatting's good on them because things get funky between computers when we do this. But I will say currently for you guys, no, but if you can give me a minute here, like a couple weeks, I could be able to share out those links as well, because we do have we have the 4 subject areas for GED translated into Spanish, the same content that's in our normal packets.
And then someone's asking the URL for the GED curriculum. Is that what you shared earlier?
That was the career coaching. So we're going to go through each subject area and share the link for each subject area's packet. And then at the end, we have a slide that summarizes all the links in case you missed one. You can get it at the end.
That's it for questions here, Heather.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with each of the 4 GED subject areas, we kind of tried to follow the same layout, the same format. So most of the time on these, you'll see each lesson is usually a 1-pager. Occasionally there's 2 pages. But at the top, there'll be a description, which is, some overview of what's to be learned or new content, etc. There'll be an example and a solution, which is typically used in class sitting side by side with somebody as teacher demonstration. So let me tell you how to do this example. That's the I do part of our I do, we do, you do, which we use a lot in our program. And then after that, there's practice questions. Usually it's 3 to 10 questions, roughly, going through 1 or 2 as a we do, let's do this together, me as the teacher and the student. And then the rest are practice for the student to check their understanding. So we tried to make them efficient in that sense, so that they're getting the content they need. And then it's building up to like, okay, let me show you, let's do it together, do it yourself. And it's as quick and easy as it can be. I would say probably 95% of our worksheets followed this format. There are a handful that we did other weird things like timelines and stuff. So I will show you guys science first. Oh, and before you guys all scream at me about the science link, It is tinyurl.com/Sparta GED Science. If you would like to go to it, you're welcome to. And so this is, I'll zoom in again because I should do that, except my computer's being really slow here. Okay, so this is our table of contents again. So all of our packets are going to start out with table of contents. They say Sparta Adult Ed at the top. You know, if you copy it over and make a copy of our document in your drive, you can make it say whatever program Adult Ed you want to say. I'm not going to yell at you. You know what? We like to have credit for things, but as long as you know that you got this from us, then we're okay. We're all right. And then they all say the subject at the top. So you can see science. We've got about 20 or so pages. It's going to follow the same general format as what the career coaching one was. So there's like the test content overview, how the test is broken down, just because a lot they're different for every subject. So we tried to include what we could. 90 minutes long, those sorts of things. And then we've got some general resources. This is not all inclusive of what we can or should use. They're just kind of the highlights of the things that we thought were good at the time that we made that list. In the GED subject ones, we include the high impact indicators for reference. So these are pulled right from GED.com. Somewhere in their educator stuff, somewhere these are listed, but we put them in here so that as a teacher, you can know what are the most important things to be teaching. Vocabulary and definitions again. And then we get into worksheets. And so the scientific method one's laid out a little different. It's a 2-pager, but you can see like hypothesis. There's a description, here's an example, and here's some practice problems. Okay, and you guys can look at this on your own. Page through it, see what you see. We figured we'll show the documents and then give an example of how we would teach each lesson, just in case we picked one lesson from every subject area. They're going to be pretty quick. I'm not actually going to teach you about genetics and Punnett squares, but we're going to do a quick one because we've found that Punnett squares are a question that will show up frequently on the science test, and students do not necessarily know the terminology in genetics content. They don't understand alleles or, you know, all these different terms on here. And so in our document, there's a page called genetics and Punnett squares, I believe. Oh, it's right here. It says understanding genetics and Punnett squares. That's the title of the page. And these are the first couple example problems. So what we would do is we'd say, here's parent 1 in black, here's parent 2 in blue, and you're going to match up the boxes. So we've got capital A. So this box is a capital A and a capital A, and they're in 2 different colors. So you can see which allele which parent each allele is coming from. So we would say, okay, if we look at this box over here, we have a capital A in blue and then a lowercase a in black. And we would have them fill those in. And then we'd be like, okay, great. Now talk dominant and recessive. And these definitions are on the page in case they don't know what they are. We would look at all of these and say, there's a capital A in all of them. So this one's going to be 100% dominant. That's the phenotype of it. And 0% recessive. And then we would do the same thing with this problem. And we would talk through, got lowercase a's here, so I'm going to fill those in. This one's got 2 with a capital A, 2 that are only lowercase, 50% dominant, 50% recessive, etc. I think there's 4 or 6 problems on that page. I don't know how many there are. I think there might be 4. But it gives them a bunch, you know, some examples, and you could come up with thousands more beyond this if you really needed it. We felt like, well, if we can get it to them in 4 examples, we're probably good and got the point across. So we're going to go into social studies, and we'll pause before the math as well to make sure if there's any questions, because the math is going to be kind of its own thing here. So let me show you the social studies one just real briefly. You're going to see it's the same exact format. Table of contents, overview of the test, some resources, high impact indicators, vocabulary, and social studies has a lot of vocabulary. I believe we've got 2 pages or 3 pages. And this one specifically, you'll see some pages that look a little different. And so if you have questions on like, how would I teach this branch as a government one, you could always email us and ask. But once you get through some of those, you'll notice there's examples or information and then practice, etc. So we are going to, for those of you, because I see, and what do we have? An anonymous anteater just joined. Oh, they went away. If you're following along in our packet, it's on page 9. We're going to look at this page, relationship between historical events. So again, tinyurl.com/Sparta GED social studies. And do you want to talk about this one, or do you want me to keep going?
I can talk about this one if you want.
Okay, I'll let you pick it up and I'll click through.
Okay, so Heather talked about how we crosswalked everything, or we tried to crosswalk things to the standards. But in the case of social studies especially, you'll never see a standard that talks about understanding historical events or specific historical events, but we find that's a real content lack for students, is that they don't know how to put things in order. So then when they do get a quote from a president or something, they don't know how to put that in context. So we added some things to hopefully help them put some historical events in context, because we know the test is very US government, US history heavy. So this one is about relationships between historical events. And here we have just a kind of a fill in the blank chart. And we tried to focus on some things that were court cases that seem to come up a lot in the test, and also civil rights issues that seem to come up in the test. So for instance, if I was teaching this, I would look at things that maybe the students might be more aware of that happened recently. So here's, if I look at number 10, it says national emergency concerning the southern border of the US. Well, that's been a thing that's it's been in the news for quite some time. So that one, you know, would be a recent issue. So you would put the 2010s in there and kind of start crossing off the things that you know, the things that you don't know. The next one would be Guantanamo Bay, which is related to 9/11. So there would be something in the 2000s. And like I said, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you know, things that happen that come up a lot seem to be Plessy versus Ferguson and Brown versus Board. So I try and talk about those so that the students have some kind of context for those. Any questions on that one? All right, we're going to go on to the next one, language arts, and Heather's going to open our document. And so it starts out the same as all the other ones. We do have in this section, we do have a number of practice essays and example essays. And the practice essays are really for them to, you know, try something. And what I do is often have them do it in a Google Doc and just email it to me and I can comment on it. And the sample essay is one thing that I think is very key, because they need to know how to structure that essay. And I always say, you know, it's a computer that's going to read that essay. It doesn't want you to have any creative writing. It's looking for keywords. It's looking for structure. And so this is not a time to be a creative writer.
So here we have our example essay, which I believe was written by one of our teachers years ago when they did a practice GED test. And just so you guys know, we did not make our own practice essays for this, but GED has them on their website. So you can see a little asterisk at the bottom that says we took these from GED and here's the website. So just so you know, these are not our own creation, but we were like, why recreate the wheel when GED has 5 practice essays already on their website? Okay.
So we're just going to do a short little main idea example here. And this is kind of a silly one, but it's one of our favorites. So it says, Emma, I can't eat or sleep when you're not here. I want to hear your scratchy voice and see your adorable, toothless smile. I miss that special way you eat soup with your fingers. Please come home soon. So what do we think is the main idea in this? And Heather always thinks that it's that Emma should see a dentist.
Emma always makes me lose my appetite. It's like, Emma's disgusting, but really Emma's probably a baby. I think Anne told, this has been in our packet for like 4 years. And the other day she's like, well, Emma's a baby. And I'm like, oh, I really just thought it was this weird description of a person, but yeah, it makes a lot more sense when it's a baby.
So obviously the answer is Emma, I miss you, even though it never says in there, Emma, I miss you, but that is the correct answer.
So this one's tinyurl.com/Sparta GED LA, for those of you that are following along with that. The math one, I'll show now too. Again, I think it was just tinyurl.com/Sparta GED math. This is the most robust of our packets. One, because students struggle with math more commonly than anything else. And 2 might be because Anne and I love math. So we wanted to make lots of math. So you can see here, table of contents. We tried to categorize them because there were so many topics that were adding into here that we tried to categorize them into like number sense would be a beginning. And these are, as you go through the math, they do kind of build on each other. So if somebody needs number sense content, they should do that first prior to doing algebra content. So try to categorize them to make it easier so that teachers can understand what order to go through them in, etc. But you'll notice we have 50 some pages of worksheets here with answer keys and everything. Same layout as everything else. Here's the content breakdown. Here's some resources. Here's the high impact indicators. And then a bunch of vocabulary and definitions. There's a page of these. There's a lot of vocabulary. There's a page of like images, because some of these things are kind of hard to explain in words, and students are going to be like, oh, if you draw me a picture of perimeter versus area, I can kind of see what it is then. Lots of various things. We have a whole page on useful calculator buttons, which I think is good. If you guys don't use the toggle button, that's like one of our favorite buttons in teaching the GED. But lots of things that they can know how to do. It will help them to know how to do, but there's, you know, the few things that are extra helpful if they know those specific, like the toggle button kind of things. So we're going to go through, I believe this is our first worksheet in here, and we're kind of going to go through it a little differently than we normally would. Do you want to, I can go back to that worksheet if you want. And
yeah, go back to the worksheet itself.
Hold on. Oh God, hold on. I'm screwing up my whole thing over here. Okay. You guys see that?
Yeah. Do you want me to take it away?
Sure, take it away.
Okay, so I think this worksheet's been in our packet for a while, and I'm not sure that it's clear quite how to use it. The attempt here was to be able to have students take a GED question that says, yeah, the quantity of 7 times or plus 6 times a number, and figure out how to write that into an equation. So a word problem into an equation. And so we put all these symbols on here, the 4 operations. If you scroll down a little, there's parentheses. and the words that kind of go with those 4 operations, an equal sign. And so this isn't really anything for the students to do other than almost use it as a reference as how these words translate into mathematical equations. And then when you go to the next page, yeah, I don't know if you want to show your poll. Yeah, here's our poll results that we had, like, what words mean addition? Pretty obvious. Again, we had a little bit of struggle with knowing there was only a 15-character limit, but sum is the most common one, the one that students know, but they might not know things like altogether or also, more than. So something for them to look at a little bit is, how do you use words to make a operation? What words mean that operation in math?
So in theory, if everyone that did our poll, we should have come up with almost all these words should then show on this little plus sign here, which I think they almost all do.
I didn't see an all in.
No. Yep, we missed one, but you guys get a 90% A for effort.
So on the next page, yeah, here's the description of what we would say on this writing math expressions. Rewrite the words as a math expression. Remember that a number is just represented as a variable such as X. So the first one is done. The words say 6 more than a number. So we got more than, which goes back to that plus sign. We got a number, which goes back to the letter X in this case. So we just have X plus 6. And then if you look at the next one, the product of 10 and a number, what I see students do all the time on this one is they do 10x x, which is kind of what they've been taught to do. 10 times x. Well, this is my opportunity at least to teach them that as we get in higher level math, mathematicians are super lazy and they stop writing xx because it is confusing. So we just jam that 10 and that x together, and that means multiply, which is something that students I find over and over again when they get to algebra, they don't know that that 10x means you're multiplying 10 times some number. So this is a good opportunity to show them what that means. And then we go to 5 less than a number. Again, students want to read left to right. That's what they're used to doing. So they'll tend to put x or 5 minus x. But in math, in subtraction especially, order matters. In addition, order doesn't matter, but in subtraction it does. So they have to learn to read this as take the number and then take 5 away. So practice of learning how to read those words and just turn them into the right mathematical equation. All right, we're finishing up here. Go ahead, Heather.
All right, so providing these materials to students. Like I said, we do bound planners. We also have online access via the links, which are all right here. If any of you missed writing any of them down, here's your chance.
Yep, or grab your camera and take a picture of the slide.
Yep, that's the best thing to do. We try to make them super easy so you can hopefully just remember them once you need to. But we can share these out as Google Docs with students. If they have a printer at home, they can print it. They could look at it on their screen and handwrite in a notebook their answers. There's lots of tricky, but options. At least they're not all great, but it gives every option that we can come up with. We try to give to students. The way these are set up too, because each page is an individual lesson, the teachers also have an option, if they have a printer at their site, to be able to print one-pagers out. So even if somebody's not doing their GED, but we know they're working on their high school diploma, and we know that they're struggling with absolute value, Anne could pull up the math GED document, know there's a sheet on absolute value, and go print that one single page out and give it to the student. So that's kind of helpful too, where you don't have to give the whole packet. You could give it piece by piece, or, you know, one page at a time, use it for however you want. And so we'll ask for questions, but here's our email addresses. If you have any questions on anything, how to use it, just want to chat about math or curriculum building or anything, you can contact either of us at any point in time.
And I would say if you find anything that you think should be added or errors, I'd be happy to get feedback. We've had pretty good feedback so far. Right now, I am working on a supplemental to the math because I love math so much that we want more. So just for a few topics that I find students struggle with, like inequalities, the absolute value, we just need more examples and more practice for them. So there might be a supplemental math that's probably only a few pages, just because they do need more opportunities to try practice problems.
And I'll mention one other thing quick too, that I'll be on a session tomorrow morning as well. It's called Utilizing a Blended Learning System that Promotes Individualized Student Success. Me and John Clark will be talking on that one. It's mostly going to be his system, his software that he talks about, but you'll be able to see some similarities in certain areas of the content. These worksheets we created only for math, but that stuff is in there as well. So, and it's more ABE focused if you have very low level learners. Lots of practice for that. So do we have any questions?
I see we have a question that says, how do you enable students to type on the documents if they are uploaded on a platform like Canvas? We haven't exactly cracked that nut, that we, to make these into Google Forms or something where they could type into them is a whole project.
I noticed you were typing on them though when you were showing us, so.
She did not type on them. She created multiple slides with the same picture and then just hit the next slide and it appeared.
Yeah, and when Anne goes into one, and let's see if I can pull one back up. When Anne goes into the math to say like, hey, you need to work on these sheets, she just goes in and highlights them and the lines and highlights them, takes a picture of it in our master doc, and then she makes it all background white again. So these are not really editable in that sense. The links you guys have should not allow you to edit either, but you could make a copy of them. I mean, getting into the territory where a student could fill it in, hypothetically, you could make a copy for each student, share it out via Google Docs with them, then they'd each have their own version. They could type right in it. We haven't gone there. Which is why we bind planners and give them that, because then they can handwrite in them.
And I do find students like to be able to handwrite. It's low tech, but man, they know how to do that.
Well, and especially with math too, because some of these worksheets you could do in your head potentially, but there's going to be some of the algebra ones where they really need to write it out. And regardless if they can do it in their head, it's better teaching practice to handwrite everything out to show them the step-by-step so that we're making sure they're understanding it, and that them doing it in their head, they're not just happening to get the right answer by chance, by some misconception. So what else do we got?
A lot of awesomes and outstandings and thank yous.
Well, there are a lot of awesomes.
Let's see. A
There are
lot
no
of other
questions in
questions.
HOVA also. There's nothing in HOVA. I was checking that. Yeah, a lot of, are we able to get all those? I think for the people asking, Heather, if you can remind them again that we're going to be sharing all this. A lot of people were asking about the resources.
Yep. Yep. I will post this PowerPoint here, a link to the whole PowerPoint. It's just a Google presentation or whatever. So I'll put a link right in there in the HOVA thing somewhere. And I did download a copy. I can share it out that way too, like upload it into HOVA, but you're not gonna be able to click on these links, I don't think so.
So there is one other question that is just a point to make, which this is several language arts topics are helpful for social studies preparation and the mean, median, mode, and range. And yeah, we recognize that some of these are like in the math, but would come up on a practice or a score report for other subjects. So you may end up highlighting or showing topics for between different subjects. Independent and independent variables I know comes up in a couple different GED subjects, and that's in science.
And that's where all these pages are, or all these packets, all the lessons within them are like one pagers, so that you can do that. You can take a science page, print out that one page and give it to a student that's struggling with that. We did include, and if you guys look through the actual packets, we did try to include like some charts and graphs and things within the science and the social studies, because a lot of students get those wrong when it's dealing with data. I'm trying to scroll down to the end. We have a whole section on, we talk about probability for a page, analyzing data, making inferences, etc. And we tried to replicate this in social studies as well, because we were noticing students, if they were getting something wrong on science and social studies, it was always what was dealing with data, graphs, tables, charts, etc. So.
I don't see any more questions, Heather, on either platform. Zoom, I think, again, a lot of thank yous. I mean, this is a lot of amazing resources. I think even for anyone that's been doing this is phenomenal. I was thinking, how long did it take you guys to put this all together? That's a question I have.
When did we start doing that? I mean, it's probably been 4 years we've been working on this, right?
It's been a work in process, and yeah, it all started out with maybe 10 or 12 math worksheets, and recruited teachers to start adding things and throwing things in, and still growing.
Yeah, I think our math, the very first version was like 4 years ago, and we created most of the math prior to making anything else, just because that was our subject area. That's where we saw we needed the most help for our students in too.
Yeah,
this has been a 4-year project at least, I would say.
Where I was pretty frustrated with Kaplan, just because I think it goes from 0 to 100 super quick with very little in between, and so students weren't kind of getting what they needed to build them up to being able to pass.
Great, thank you so much. I think that concludes it. Heather, if you are okay with the conclusion, I think, again, I just want to, just take a quick comment. I mean, just again, hats off to you both for doing this. Is phenomenal, the work that you do. And I think what you've done also, you recognized the needs of your students, and you've done that. And I think this is what we do in adult ed. We always recognize what our students need, like our own unique cluster of students that we serve. And you felt like this is the best way to do that. I know this may work for a lot of programs, it may not work. So again, it's just another resource that we share. And I think this is what we do in adult ed, is the sharing of information is outstanding. And I saw this a few years back, and I said, wow, like this is just absolutely, just the patience to continue to compile this is unbelievable. I think, to me, wow, like you continued, like you didn't give up, you continued in compiling this information. So this is really hats off to you both for the work that you do. Thank you so much again. And thanks to everyone that attended today's session. Please make sure you go and rate this session. I think we're going to get 10 out of 10s. on this one, but please go ahead and do that. It would really help. Again, it will help the people that presented. It will help for, you know, the next time. I mean, just imagine another conference with new people with this kind of information that's being shared. So please go ahead and rate that. We have an animal trivia tonight at 7 o'clock. So please go ahead and join that. And again, we have one more session for the day, and I think you guys are good to go. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.